Imagine a world where your entire worth is determined by how many layers of silk you're wearing and how well you can rhyme cherry blossom with sadness. That's the Heian court. In the center of it is the emperor, who is supposed to be a stoic symbol of the state, but he's currently losing his mind over a low-ranking concubine named Kiritsubo. This isn't a happily ever after situation. The court is a shark tank. The high-ranking ladies, led by the Kokiden consort, basically bully Kiritsubo to death. They leave trash in her hallways, they whisper as she passes. It's mean girls, but with 11th century Japanese etiquette. Kiritsubo eventually dies of a broken heart and likely a suppressed immune system from the stress, leaving behind a toddler. This kid is Hikaru Genji. He is so physically perfect that the emperor considers him a miracle, but the emperor is also a realist. He knows that if he makes Genji the heir, the Kokiden faction will have the boy disappeared before he hits puberty. So he does something radical. He demotes Genji to commoner status, giving him the surname Minamoto. This removes him from the line of succession but allows him to live. Genji grows up as the shining prince, a guy who is better at everything than everyone else. He plays the flute better, he dances better, and he definitely dresses better. But he has a giant, gaping hole in his psyche where his mother should be. The emperor eventually finds a replacement for his dead wife, a princess named Fujitsubo. She looks exactly like Genji's mother. Genji is 12 when she arrives, and he is immediately catastrophically smit. This is the original sin of the book. She's his stepmother, his father's wife, and the woman who reminds him of the mother he never knew. It's a psychological disaster waiting to happen. Genji is married off at 16 to Lady Aoi. It's a political match. Ai is older, serious, and deeply unimpressed by Genji's golden boy persona. She treats him with a chilly, distant respect that drives him crazy. Since he can't find warmth at home and he can't legally have Fujitsubo, he starts a legendary streak of vibe-coding his way through the bedrooms of Kyoto. This is where the story turns into a frantic montage. Genji isn't just looking for sex, he's looking for a specific type of aesthetic and emotional resonance. First, there's Utsusemi. She's the wife of a middle-aged provincial official. Genji tries to sneak into her room, but she's smart. She slips out of her robe and vanishes into the shadows, leaving him holding a piece of empty silk. She's the only woman who ever truly says no to him, and he obsesses over her for years because of it. Then there's Ukiyo-e. Genji finds her living in a rundown house covered in evening faces, white flowers. She's mysterious and low-born, which is a huge turn-on for a prince who's bored with high society snobbery. They have a whirlwind, secret romance in a deserted, creepy mansion. But Genji has another lover, the Rokujo Haven. Rokujo is an older, sophisticated widow. She's brilliant, but Genji is starting to ignore her. Her jealousy is so intense that her living spirit literally detaches from her body while she's asleep. This spirit, a literal manifestation of female rage, flies to the mansion and haunts Ukiyo to death while Genji is right there in the room. Genji wakes up to a corpse and a ghost. It's a wake-up call he completely ignores. While recovering from a fever in the mountains, Genji sees a 10-year-old girl named Murasaki. She is Fujitsubo's niece. Genji's brain does the math. She looks like Fujitsubo. Fujitsubo looks like my mother. If I take this child and raise her, I can create the perfect woman who will never leave me. Is it creepy? Yes. By modern standards, it's horrifying. By Heian standards, it was an unconventional adoption. He basically kidnaps her after her grandmother dies and brings her to his palace. He spends years teaching her poetry, calligraphy, and how to be the perfect companion. Murasaki becomes the love of his life, but even she isn't enough to stop his wandering eye. Genji finally manages to have a secret encounter with Fujitsubo. She gets pregnant. The emperor thinks the baby is his and celebrates the birth of a new prince. Genji is living in a state of constant terror that someone will see the resemblance. The guilt starts to eat at him. His luck finally runs out when he's caught with Ukiyo-e, the sister of his political rival, the Kokiden consort. This is a bridge too far. He's forced into voluntary exile to avoid a public execution, or worse. He heads to Suma, a desolate, stormy coastline. This is Genji's growth phase. He loses the silk robes, he lives in a hut, and he listens to the wind. He realizes he's a piece of work. But he can't stop being Genji. He meets a local aristocrat, the Akashi novice, who basically offers up his daughter, the Akashi lady. Genji has an affair with her, and she gives birth to a daughter who is prophesied to become empress. Political winds change. Genji is pardoned and returns to Kyoto, not just as a prince, but as the most powerful man in the country. He builds the Rokujo estate, a massive palace with 4 wings representing the 4 seasons. He moves all his favorites into their own wings. Murasaki gets spring. The Akashi lady gets winter. On the surface, it's a paradise. Underneath, it's a psychological battlefield. These women have to live in the same complex, sharing the same man while maintaining a facade of perfect elegance. The peak of the tragedy occurs during the AI festival. Lady Aoi, Genji's primary wife, and the Rokujo Haven, the jealous ex, have a literal carriage accident where their servants fight for a parking spot. It's the ultimate high society snub. Rokujo's spirit once again leaves her body, haunts the pregnant AI, and kills her right after she gives birth to Genji's son. Genji is devastated, but mostly he's terrified of the power of women's resentment. As Genji hits middle age, the shining starts to fade. He is pressured into marrying a teenage girl, the third princess. He doesn't want to, he loves Murasaki, but he has to. Karmic justice finally arrives. A young courtier named Kashiwagi falls in love with the third princess and has an affair with her. She gets pregnant. Genji discovers a letter from the lover and realizes the truth. He looks at the baby Kaoru and realizes he is now in the exact position his father was in decades ago, raising a child that isn't his. He can't even be angry because he knows he did the exact same thing to his father. The real end of Genji's soul happens when Murasaki gets sick. She's tired. She spent her life as a replacement for other women, dealing with Genji's endless affairs with grace. She wants to become a nun to find her own peace, but Genji refuses to let her. He is too selfish to let his perfect creation leave him. She dies in a state of quiet, refined exhaustion. Genji spends a year in mourning, looking at her empty rooms. The text then skips a chapter called Vanished into the Clouds. We don't see him die, he just stops being. The light goes out. The final third of the book is often called the Uji chapters, and they are much darker and more modern. They follow Kaoru, the son who isn't really his, and Neo, his grandson. If Genji was a master of aesthetics, Kaoru is a master of anxiety. He smells naturally like incense, which sounds cool, but it makes him impossible to hide. He is obsessed with finding meaning in a world that feels empty. He and Neo, a flamboyant playboy, get involved with three sisters living in the misty, bridge-crossed town of Uji. The oldest sister, Oigami, is so traumatized by the idea of marriage and the messy lives of her parents that she literally starves herself to death rather than commit to Kaoru. The middle sister, Nakano Kimi, gets caught in a tug-of-war. The youngest and illegitimate sister, Ukifune, looks just like the dead Oigami. Kaoru and Neo both obsess over Ukifune. They treat her like a trophy, moving her from house to house, gaslighting her and fighting over her. Ukifune, feeling like an object rather than a human, tries to drown herself in the Uji River. She survives and is found by some monks. In the ultimate act of logging off, she cuts her hair, becomes a nun, and refuses to even acknowledge Kaoru's existence when he finds her. The book ends with Kaoru standing in the rain, wondering if someone is hiding her from him. There is no resolution. No one wins. The cycle of obsession just peters out into the mist.